They said she was too quiet to survive what was coming. They said people like her disappear in places like that, and for a while, it almost felt like they were right, because the night her village burned, no one heard her scream, not even herself. The fire rose fast, like it had been waiting for years. Houses cracked and collapsed, and men with cold eyes walked through the smoke as if they owned the darkness. They laughed while people begged. They took everything and left nothing but ash. And in the middle of it all, she stood frozen, watching her world fall apart piece by piece, her hands shaking but her face still, because something inside her had already gone quiet long before the flames arrived. They called him untouchable, the man behind it all, powerful, connected, protected by men in uniforms and suits, a ghost no one could accuse, a shadow no one could fight, and when people whispered his name, they lowered their voices, because fear had become part of their language. She lost everything that night, her home, her family, her voice, and for days after, she wandered through the remains like she didn't belong to the world anymore, like she had been left behind by time itself. And when people looked at her, they saw nothing but a broken woman who had no place left to go. She didn't cry, not in front of anyone, not even when she was alone, because the pain was too deep for tears. It had settled somewhere quiet inside her, turning into something heavier, something that didn't need to be seen to exist. They thought she would leave, like everyone else who survived, but she stayed, silent, unnoticed, blending into the background of a world that had already forgotten her. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and nothing changed. The same men still walked free. The same fear lived in every corner, and justice felt like a word people used only to comfort themselves, not something that ever truly arrived. But something small began to shift inside her, not loud, not visible, just a quiet spark that refused to die, a thought that maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over yet. She started to move differently, observe more, speak less. She listened to the silence between people's words. She watched patterns, routines, weaknesses, and slowly, patiently, she began to understand the system that had destroyed her life. No one noticed her, and that was her greatest strength, because invisibility can be a weapon when used right. They underestimated her, dismissed her, forgot her, and in doing so, they gave her time, and time was all she needed. The man they feared continued to rise, more powerful than ever, surrounded by loyalty built on fear and money, convinced that no one could touch him, convinced that the past had been buried under the ashes of that night, but he didn't know that some things don't burn, some things wait. She trained in silence, far from the eyes of those who would question her, learning, adapting, becoming something no one expected, not out of anger, but out of purpose, because revenge alone wasn't enough. She wanted truth, she wanted balance, she wanted the world to see what had been hidden for too long. There were moments when doubt crept in, when the weight of everything almost pulled her back into that broken version of herself, but each time, she remembered the faces, the voices that were silenced, and she moved forward again, one step at a time, steady, patient, unshaken. The first crack in his empire was small, almost invisible, a missing shipment, a failed deal, something his men dismissed as bad luck, but she knew better. She had planned it that way, slow, careful, like a storm building far away where no one can see it yet. He began to feel it too, not fully, not clearly, just a sense that something was off, something he couldn't control, and for the first time in years, uncertainty touched him, lightly, like a warning he didn't understand. She didn't rush, she didn't make mistakes, every move was precise, every action calculated, because she knew one wrong step could erase everything she had built, and she had come too far to fall now. People started to talk again, quietly at first, then louder, stories resurfaced, questions were asked, and the fear that once kept everyone silent began to weaken, replaced by something unfamiliar, something fragile but growing, hope. He tried to stop it, of course he did, he always had control, he always found a way, but this time was different, because he wasn't fighting people, he was fighting something he couldn't see, something that didn't play by his rules. She stayed in the shadows, watching, waiting for the right moment, because patience is what separates survival from victory, and she had learned that lesson well. When the truth finally came out, it didn't explode, it unfolded, piece by piece, undeniable, unstoppable, and the world that once protected him turned away, one by one, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, human. He tried to run, to hide, to use the same power that had saved him before, but it was gone, because power built on fear cannot survive truth, and the truth had finally found its voice. She stood at a distance when it ended, not close enough to be seen, but close enough to feel it, the moment everything shifted, the moment justice, quiet and patient, finally arrived. There was no celebration, no victory cry, just a deep, steady breath, like the world had finally exhaled after holding it in for too long. She didn't go back, there was nothing left to return to, but for the first time since that night, she felt something she had almost forgotten, not happiness, not yet, but peace, quiet, fragile, real. And as she walked away, unnoticed once again, she carried with her the truth that no one else understood, that sometimes the strongest people are the ones who say nothing, who wait, who endure, and when the time is right, they don't just survive, they change everything.